Go to ya, everyone. Thank you so much for checking out my channel and this video series on the High Republic comic book. My name is John, and I am a Star Wars scholar. I create content for Star Wars fans like you and me by discussing things like plot, themes, philosophy, and everything else that makes Star Wars so amazing. My hope is to offer you engaging videos with stuff that we both love, and I really hope you take a moment to engage with me back. In this video, I offer my thoughts on Issue 1, Trial by Ordeal. So let's get to it. The comic series begins on Sheridan, homeworld of the Ximpi, where Padawan Keeve Trennis is in a training session with Master Sskeer, all the while being harassed by a Ximpi named Cainri. Sskeer sees Keeve apparently distracted and chooses that time to attack from an ambush. Keeve is able to withstand his attack and knock him to the ground. She wonders why they are on Sheridan. She believes Sskeer should be recovering after losing his arm, and she should be preparing for her Jedi trials. She worries that her master thinks that she is not ready for her trials. He responds that they are on Sheridan because this is where Keeve will have her trials. He then explains the trial. He has hung a pendant at the top of a tall needle-like rock. Keeve must choose which needle has the pendant, climb it, and recover the pendant without falling or giving up. The scene moves to Keeve climbing one of the needles, while still being harassed by Cainri's incessant questions. The needle breaks, but Keeve is able to use her lightsaber to stop her fall. Cainri points out his city in the distance, as Lakaki, another Ximpi, joins them. Suddenly, Keeve hears a buzzing noise, and the needles are destroyed by a swarm of Raidadi, which are giant insects. The scene then cuts to Starlight Beacon, where Jedi Master Avar Kriss is questioning Master Maru about the whereabouts of Sskeer. Kriss is worried about Sskeer because he has not been the same since the Battle of Kur, where Sskeer lost his arm. Maru suggests Sskeer blames himself for the death of Master Mali, but Kriss dismisses that suggestion because she cannot hear his song in the Force, which means Sskeer is holding something back. At this point, Grandmasters Yoda and Veter greet Kriss, and Veter mentions that they are at Starlight Beacon because they have a meeting with Chancellor So to discuss Bacta manufacturing for the relief effort of the Great Disaster. Yoda tells Kriss that he has not finished on the Starhopper with the younglings, which is the main plot for the comic book series The High Republic Adventures. Veter informs Kriss that they are also there to offer her the marshalship of Starlight Beacon, effectively putting her in control of the entire operation. The scene shifts back to Keeve, who sees that the Raidadi are headed for the Ximpi city. She chooses to abandon her trial to help the Ximpi city. She takes the Vector to get ahead of the swarm and contacts Master Maru for information. Maru says that the Raidadi migrate through the space around Sheridan once in a generation, but they specifically avoid inhabited worlds. Maru suggests Keeve ask the Raidadi why they have deviated from their path and onto an uninhabited world. Keeve makes contact with the swarm and informs Maru that the magnetic pulse that they use to navigate has been disrupted by the signal of Starlight Beacon. Keeve rigs her Vector to replicate Starlight Beacon's signal in order to draw the Raidadi away from Sheridan. Meanwhile, Maru recalibrates the signal of Starlight Beacon so as not to interfere with their navigation. Keeve puts the Vector on autopilot, which leaves the Raidadi off-world, and she and Cainri jump out. The scene shifts to Keeve working to repair the damage caused by the Raidadi on the Ximpi city. Sskeer approaches and asks where their Vector is. Keeve answers that the Vector is no longer on Sheridan. and Sskeer walks away and calls Starlight Beacon for immediate transportation. Sskeer and Trennis arrive at Starlight Beacon, with Keeve still trying to explain to her master what happened. Without answering, Sskeer leads her into the main hall, where Chris is waiting. Keeve tries to explain what happened to Chris, and asks if she can take the trial again, as her first one was interrupted. But instead, Chris knights her. The scene shifts to the dedication ceremony of Starlight Beacon, where Chris is giving a speech on the purpose of Starlight Beacon, while Keeve wonders if she is actually ready to be a Jedi Knight. Keeve realizes that the entire ordeal with the Ximpi and the Raidati was a test Sskeer planned through the Force, and it was one that she passed. The final scene cuts to Sskeer, who enters a private room and yells in obvious distress. I want to begin my commentary with this issue's opening crawl before diving into the actual plot. The opening paragraph is a nice summation of the situation of the High Republic. However, it is unclear how accurate that summation is. This issue takes place during the events of Light of the Jedi, wherein the Jedi eventually face off against the Nile. How, exactly, is that a galaxy at peace? Perhaps this simply means that there is not a galactic conflict happening like the ones found in the cinematic releases. Yet the final sentence of the third paragraph seems to contradict the opening sentence of the first paragraph. How is the galaxy at peace, and yet the guardians and protectors of that peace face a threat to themselves, the galaxy, and the Force itself? But perhaps the Nile are not the true threats here. They are, at least in Light of the Jedi, marauders who have special hyperspace access, but they hardly appear to threaten the Jedi, the galaxy, and most importantly, the Force. The Jedi Knights are specifically called wise, but two of the main Jedi in this issue do not appear wise. Keeve Trennis, whom the story focuses on, is made a Jedi Knight at the end of the issue, but she is full of self-doubt and negative thoughts, misunderstanding, and curse words. No doubt she is noble, as her actions in this issue demonstrate, but I would think it obvious she is not wise. Second, Master Sskeer also does not appear wise, but in a different sense. If Sskeer did bring Keeve to Sheridan because he somehow knew, through the Force, that the Raidati would swarm the planet and they needed to be there to help, then he does not appear wise because the path he takes to solve it, which includes losing a vector and having the Ximpi city damaged, appears unwise. Also, why not simply tell Maru at the beginning to fix the beacon signal? If Sskeer did not know about the Raidati swarm, and the trial really was just to get the pendant from the top of one of the needles, then he is not wise, because the trial, while challenging, never really seemed to be in doubt before the Raidati swarm. Also, whatever emotional pain Sskeer is experiencing, or whatever he is hiding, does not make it seem like he is wise, as the final page of the issue indicates. The second paragraph of the opening crawl makes reference to Starlight Beacon, and specifically that it will serve as a ray of hope for all to see. However, it is Starlight Beacon that causes the Raidati swarm to be thrown off course and inadvertently threaten the Ximpi city and the inhabited world of Sheridan. Therefore, it is Starlight Beacon that causes the conflict of the issue's plot. No follow-up is given to the effects of the Raidati before encountering Trennis, but it is a notable point that as soon as the station begins to broadcast its signal, the first real effect is a negative one. It is not a ray of hope for all to see. My criticism of this opening crawl is not meant to degrade the issue or the work of the author. Instead, I merely wish to point out questions that will hopefully find answers in future issues. Keeve Trennis is presented in a very interesting way in this opening issue. On the one hand, she is a very capable Jedi Padawan, whom her master, who is respected by Chris, believes to be ready for her trials. She is intelligent, skilled, independent, noble-hearted, and humble. Yet, she is also rash, full of self-doubt, and curses too much. This issue specifically dwells on that last point. Sskeer tells her to watch her language, which we see in her thought boxes early on, that she has a tendency to curse, and she returns to that cursing language when she meets Chris at Starlight Beacon. Much has also been made of Keeve's physical appearance, with some fans not liking her hairstyle, believing it to directly point to certain political or ideological positions in our own world. However, I would like to offer an alternative suggestion. Keeve is of two minds, the talented Padawan, but also the uncertain teenager, the decisive warrior who swears too much, the compassionate peacekeeper who wants to save a city but is not sorry when she knocks her master to the ground. Even her lightsaber is double-sided. One might interpret her hairstyle as showing that she is of two minds. But before I go more into Trennis, I would like to pause and discuss her master. Sskeer's duality is just as noticeable as Trennis's. Chris is openly worried about Sskeer, and his recent actions are out of character. He has left Starlight Beacon but not told anyone, including his Padawan, why they have come to Sheridan. Chris, Keeve, and Maru all worry that something is wrong with Sskeer, even though he is attempting to hide it from everyone. Everyone's fears are confirmed on the final page. And in a twist of irony or foreshadowing, it is noteworthy that Chris, Maru, and Keeve all worry about Sskeer, but the two Grand Masters, and importantly Yoda, fail to comment or recognize the other's concern. Yoda only mentions some platitude of becoming one with the Force, as he does to Anakin 2 centuries later in Episode 3, but he and Veter completely fail to address the more specific question of Sskeer, his whereabouts, and his recent actions. Perhaps this demonstrates the greater independence of the High Republic Jedi, but Chris's concern and desire to know where he is seems to suggest the opposite. Additionally, whereas Keeve's duality is in everything that she does and say, and perhaps even in her lightsaber and in her physical appearance, Sskeer's duality is in the noticeable lack of wholeness. Sskeer has recently lost his arm at the Battle of Kur, and while his arm will eventually grow back because he is a Trandoshan, his missing arm might symbolize that Sskeer is in some important way incomplete. He is not at peace, as his gruff behavior and secretive nature and his emotional outburst all imply. I want to end on a piece of speculation. I understand that the Ximpi have appeared in Star Wars before, specifically in the Lando comic written by Charles Soule. But it is noteworthy here that Kenri only ever addresses Keeve, or another Ximpi, and no one else addresses the Ximpi but Keeve. Sskeer simply ignores them throughout the issue, and does not respond to anything Kenri says. Instead, Sskeer simply points out that Keeve is distracted. The conversations between Sskeer and Keeve make complete sense without the Ximpi, and Sskeer's total disregard of the Ximpi, their city, and the effects of the Raidati is striking. Therefore, I want to offer the following theory. In this instance, the Ximpi are not actual characters, but manifestations of Keeve's thinking and self-doubt. Only Keeve addresses them, and only Keeve is worried about them. The Ximpi only address Keeve and are completely ignored by Sskeer. They also completely ignore Sskeer. When Keeve finally mentions the Ximpi to Sskeer, as they land on Starlight Beacon, in order to explain why she quit her trial and why the Vector was sent on autopilot into space, Sskeer completely ignores her explanation. The only thing he does is explain that Chris is now the Marshal of Starlight Beacon. Kenri's dialogue plays out like the other half of an internal dialogue of someone who is experiencing self-doubt. His dialogue is simply asking obvious questions, and these questions can be read as Keeve questioning herself. So I suggest that the Ximpi, at least in this issue, are not really characters in the same sense as Keeve, Chris, Sskeer, and the rest are. Instead, the Ximpi are projections of Keeve's self-doubt, which act as a foil to the green thought boxes throughout the issue. Once she has proven herself a Jedi Knight and passes her own version of the trials, the Ximpi disappear from the story, and the only thing left are those positive green thought boxes. Therefore, the duality of Keeve, at least in how it is expressed in this issue, is resolved to some acceptable standard. Thanks for sticking around until the end of this video. Please drop a like if you think this video deserves it, and comment if you want to add your thoughts. Also, check out my other videos in this playlist, or any of my other videos. Until next time, my friends, stay on target, and may the Force be with you.